Columbia Rotary Club. Rusty, are you ready to play for us? All right, we're going to have our national anthem on Rusty to pass.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you in this season of Thanksgiving with grateful hearts. We are blessed beyond measure. Thank you for the opportunity to be in relationship with you, Father. Thank you for the beauty of your creation. Thank you for our families, our friends, and our community. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of a service club that has as its focus and motto, service above self. Father, we ask that you bless this food, that it may nourish us and enable us to serve you better. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, before we get to our visiting Rotarians and guests, please, someone at the table hold up your cart buckets. All right, dig deep in your purses, ladies. Get out the 40 pounds of change, put it in there. Gentlemen, same with your pockets. All goes to a good cause. And I'm going to ask Cynthia Benson. I saw you just a minute ago. I'm going to ask Cynthia Benson to come up here, and she's going to welcome our visiting Rotarians and guests.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing? We only have one visiting Rotarian that I'm aware of. Can you hear me now? We only have one visiting Rotarian that I'm aware of, Mr. T.R. Parrish from Lexington. Hello, nice to meet you. Oh, and we also have Lou Mello here as well. Do we have any guests?
Good afternoon, I'm Henry Baskins, and with me here today is Rose Dangerfield. Rose is the Vice President of Communications and Marketing with the Columbia Chamber. Also with me is Chloe Rogers. Chloe's with Cola Today.
Hi, I'm Matt Kendall, and I'm very happy to have here with me today Chase Heatherly. Chase is the publisher of the Free Times. Kiss not allowed for a little second.
About Preston today, I've got a guest, Jeff Wheeler, and he should be no stranger to this room. He's a former member of this club, has spent many years with real estate business. He went in the ministry with Dick and Baptist years ago. But the reason he's here today is because there are a number of people in this club that are responsible for putting on the government prayer breakfast. And with that, it's going to be on March 21st. Number two, I want you to know that he's going to be the MC of that, which is my part today. And number three, we generally don't tell you this, but I'll tell you our speaker is this year, General Rock Williams.
That's everyone. Thank you guys very much.
All right, I wanted to talk to you guys for a quick second about Salvation Army bell ringing. Libby, will you just raise your hand, stand up? Everybody please give Libby a huge round of applause. Jack Sloan will tell you that that is a very difficult job to herd all of the cats for the bell ringing. But I will say, after looking at the spreadsheet, there are so many people in this club who are not ringing the bell this year. And I, for one, I have three slots available this coming Saturday at Greens. Oh, hello. Let me tell you, I work pretty hard for this club. I'm going to do it on this microphone. You better believe it. But my point being that there's a lot of you that haven't signed up to ring the bell at all this season. So the captains are really taking on long shifts, you know. If I don't find somebody this coming Saturday, I'm going to have to sit at Greens for 6 hours, which means I'm going to, you know, have to visit the store a couple of times while I'm ringing. So if you have not signed up, there's plenty of us who have slots to fill. So please, if you can give your time, we would greatly appreciate it. And Libby, from the bottom of my heart, absolutely appreciate you taking on that this year. To ask Sandra Owensby to come up here. She's going to do our Discover Rotary moment.
Good afternoon, my fellow Rotarians. My name is Sandra Owensby, and I'm the Executive Director with the Lurie Center. I'm from Augusta, Georgia, and I have been in nonprofit at the Executive Director level for both national and grassroots nonprofits for a little over 20 years. Prior to that, I was a banker, and I am married to the movie maker Earl Owensby from Shelby, North Carolina. I have one son who is a corporate attorney in Mobile, Alabama, and of course I have two of the most brilliant, beautiful grandchildren in the whole universe. And I have been a Rotarian since 1994. I belong to several different clubs. But I just want to share a couple of little tidbits with you. My first meeting in 1994 in Augusta, I sat at what I did not know was the good old boys table. So I was asked, would I please move? I said, well, I've been kicked out of better joints than this. So naturally, I moved. Years later, I went out with one of those guys, and he had a lapse of memory. He did not remember asking me to sit at another table. And then I did a makeup in a little town called Washington, Georgia, and one of the gentlemen came out and said, well, you must be our speaker. And I said, no, I'm doing a makeup. And he said, you are a Rotarian? So, anyway, Rotary has come a long way since then. I belong to the Shelby Club in North Carolina, and then I belong to the Spartanburg Club, and now I belong to the great Columbia Club. But a couple of things that they did, I'm very into pomp and circumstance, so I'm an Episcopalian. But one of the things that I would like to see us do, that the club in Augusta does, and I'll pass this along to Carrie, is when you do the changing of the guard, they go back as far as all the living members of Rotary that have been the president, and they pass the gavel till it gets to the new person. And I just think that has a nice little touch, and it's a way of reaching out to former Rotarians too. And another thing they do with the Paul Harris Fellow is they have fellow members to nominate and contribute for someone to get the Paul Harris Fellow. They do a major bio on them. They invite the entire family of the recipient and put the medal around their neck. It's not, like I said, it's a lot of pomp and circumstance, but it has a nice little touch. But what Rotary means to me is good friendships and support from fellow Rotarians who all of us practice service, I hope, practice service above self. And I'm very proud to be a member of this club, and thanks to Libby for sponsoring me.
Thank you, Sandra. That's going to take some coordination, I think, to get all those, I'm the 101st president of this club. So, I think we have probably a long line of folks to get up here, but that's a really great idea. All right, Robin Gorman, where are you? We're going to have some Paul Harris Fellows today, and Robin's going to give us an update on the foundation and some information about that. So ladies and gentlemen, past president Robin Gorman.
Thank you, Carrie. I don't know that I needed to follow immediately because we don't do what I just heard about Paul Harris, but that's a good challenge. So I think those are great ideas. I had planned, because we do have some recognition today, and I don't want to take away from them. I had planned to give sort of a little slick, presentation, and I thought back over things that we've done with the foundation in past years. And I thought, I'm just going to speak from a personal standpoint rather than doing a slide presentation or whatever. So when I was president-elect of the Rotary, we had the international meeting in Canada, actually in Montreal, Quebec. There is, and some of you have seen it, the House of Friendship, and in there, all the different Rotary clubs, not all the different ones, but a lot of them have displays and whatnot. And there are all kinds of exhibits. Some of you may have heard me tell this before, but I walked into an exhibit and I just went stone cold. The exhibit was the iron lung. Are any of you in here old enough to remember the days when polio was treated? People were in iron lungs. How many of you remember that? Well, Rotary, and that was just a horrible existence, and many died, many were crippled. Well, Rotary International has been the major player, along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to eradicate polio nationwide. There have been some cases that have kind of popped up over in undeveloped countries, but it is well under control. There are many other things that the foundation does, and I think that part of I don't want to say it's a problem, but the part of the situation, I'll use that word, that we have to look at is that we can't touch it, we can see it, but we can't touch it or feel it. We don't have, the experiences, because when we do have many Rotarians who go overseas into these undeveloped countries where they help with the water systems, and you all know about that, and help with some of the projects. There are many other projects that the foundation does. One of those, of course, is the exchange program, which is a wonderful program, and there's a scholars program as well. Matthew McConaughey, by the way, was a recipient of one of the scholars programs, and he talks about Rotary from time to time. The thing is that when in I think it was 1926, when the foundation was formed, it was an offshoot of course, the original Rotary Club concept. And the person who founded it, I cannot pronounce his name, he said, we need to do more. We are doing a lot in our community, but there's more we can do nationwide. And so that's how the foundation started. I am not able to go to an undeveloped country, physically, maybe not emotionally. I'm not able to have an on-hands effect on what the Rotary Foundation is actually doing. But I can make a contribution. My money is at work. And so my monetary contribution to the foundation is just as effective as those who are able to be there with hands-on. We may not think it is because our amount, our amount is so small. I think the amount, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, the amount is so small that we think, well, if I give $1,000 a year or $100 a year, of course, the level, first level is 1,000, then, you know, what impact does that have? But if it's done in numbers, it has a tremendous impact. And so basically, rather than coming to you with statistics and a slick slide presentation that shows you, you know, a pie chart and all of that, I'm just going to appeal to you from an emotional standpoint that please consider, if only $100 a year, but please consider that contribution to Paul Harris, because your money is definitely working, and it's working for you in places where you yourself cannot physically be. So please think about that, and I would like it then at this time to recognize those individuals who have indeed, as many of you have, who have indeed contributed to Paul Harris. So at this time, I'd like for Matt Burton, Judge Joe Anderson, and David Clark to come forward. I want you to get a good look at these gentlemen. This shows that there are different levels. The first level that you achieve is when you have contributed $1,000. And then for every 1,000 after that, it's actually called Paul Harris Point +1 or Paul Harris +2 or whatever the case may be. And so know that, again, if you so choose, which would be wonderful, you can make a $1,000 contribution every year, and your pen has stones that increase. And then there's actually a bigger one, which I'll speak about in a minute at the end. Okay, so Matt Burton, you are receiving a Paul Harris +2. And Joe Anderson, you are receiving a Paul Harris +5. And David Clark is receiving a Paul Harris +6, and his pen now has a ruby. So that's it. I would like, and this is not to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but I would like for all of those who have achieved Paul Harris first level and beyond, first and beyond, to please stand and be recognized. So much, and you three gentlemen, thank you all as well. And one quick thing, I'm going to miss today's program. I'm going to have a root canal. You ever hear that thing about, well, I'd rather have a root canal than have to? Well, I'd rather not have the root canal. I'd much rather be here. I hate to miss the presentation on the Greater Columbia Chamber. I was the first female president in 1995. That shows how old I am. Kathy Nolan came later, and I don't think we've had a female president since, so maybe that's something that they can be challenged with. Also, I want to say to the city, Libby, look at the chamber. Look what they have up there. They've got Finley Park's fountain. It hasn't worked in 3 years. Maybe that's a challenge to the city that the chamber thinks it's worth having fixed. So, anyway, you all have a good day.
Thank you, Robin, and what a huge group of people in this room who have received at least their first Paul Harris. That is something we should all give ourselves a round of applause for that. So, Alan, I'm going to ask you to come up really quick. We've got some guests with us today, and Alan Riverson's going to come up here and introduce us to all of these two delightful ladies and our friend Lou Mello.
Good afternoon. We do have a guest today, and I'm delighted to have Lou Mello. And most of you out here know Lou. Lou's a past district governor, past foundation chair, and currently district district chair of Rotary Youth Exchange. And I'm the chairman of Rotary Youth Exchange for this club. And we also are especially pleased to have two other guests with Lou, who he's going to introduce right now. And we're trying to recruit a young student from the area to go out of the country to be an exchange student for next year, and Lou will tell you a little bit more about that. Thank you, Lou.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was here a few years ago as district governor, and I was telling the girls on the way up here, I said, I do remember they have the best desserts in the district. And that's still true, and the best buffet as well. So, very happy to be here. I'm talking with my Youth Exchange hat. I'm also the Global Ambassadorial Scholar Chair as well. So that's something you might be interested in sponsoring a potential candidate to go abroad as a global scholar. But Youth Exchange, we have 15 inbounds, we have 15 outbounds who are all over the world. These are great kids. They live with about 3 host families generally, sometimes maybe just 2 during the course of the year. And what we're looking for is a little more support from some of our clubs. Your club has been very kind to support the program financially, and maybe it's time now to move into the next step. Maybe you find some host families, some youth exchange officers, and then we'll work with you to have your own inbound students and your own outbound students as well belonging to the Columbia Club. So, enough for me. I want to introduce to you 2 young ladies. Kathleen is from Belgium. She's going to speak first, and then Hannah's from Germany. And they're going to tell you a couple little things because we have a total of like 5 minutes.
Hi, I am Kathleen. I am from Belgium. I am in Mondo High School. The fun fact is that my host mom cooked better than my real mom. And the biggest challenge is making close friends who like to speak with you, because it's hard for us to speak in English in the beginning. Thank you, because I'm really grateful to be here.
Kathleen's English is very, very good, but she's got the French accent. And the French accents and the kids that come from France and Belgium, that accent stays throughout the year, never really goes away. So, Hannah from Germany.
Hello everyone, my name is Hannah, I'm from Germany. I'm also going to the Wando High School, and my biggest challenge was that when I got here, all the sports already started, so it was really hard to get any kind of sport for me. And yeah, the best thing that happened to me was that I was so surprised how fast I get into one of the family members from my family right now, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And I just want to thank you for making it possible for me and Kathleen to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Kathleen was telling me that she loves food, and I asked her if she was a chef or if she liked to cook the food, and she said, no, I just like to eat it. So she's my kindred spirit. And Hannah is also a very talented musician, plays a lot of different instruments, so very talented kids coming over. And now we have a treat, because we've got our friend Glenn Ward doing Health and Happiness today, so I'm going to turn that over to him.
Thank you, President Kerry. I'll be very brief today in honor of our speaker. Club News. David Clark told me on the way in that he has been a member of Rotary. I asked him, he said, I joined Rotary in Spartanburg back in 1970 or 1971. According to my math, that's 46, 47 years ago. David Clark. That's great, David. And the queen of our club, Dr. Ryle, was back today after a total knee replacement surgery. She thanks you for your prayers, your cards, your concerns. She said something about some kind of hiney kicking thing is back working again or something. I didn't quite catch that. Just watch out for her. She's back. Jimmy Derrick told me today that his wife Laura has been elected the president of the South Carolina Association of Realtors, only the 7th female to hold that position in its history. That's an honor. Let's give Laura. Very quickly, just a thought about Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving is 10 days away, but we're not meeting next Monday, so thank you, Russ, for your beautiful prayer already regarding Thanksgiving. I'm in Thanksgiving mode. My family will tell you that I love Christmas, I love Easter, I love the holidays. I have friends who celebrate Hanukkah. They will be doing that soon as we're celebrating Christmas, and rightfully so. But there's something about Thanksgiving that has always been very dear to me. I like the time of the year, the fall of the year, the cooler temps, especially here in Columbia. I like the changing of the colors of the leaves. I like the menu. My sister was emailing me or texting me the other night about who's cooking what for our family gathering. We're all set for all of that. We're into that. But there's something deeper about Thanksgiving, of course, and that's the spirit of gratefulness. 2017 has been another good year for me and my family, and I'm grateful to God Almighty for that. A couple of quick things. I celebrated my 25th year professional speaking last Friday. I'm grateful for that. My silver medal. And equally as important to me, in 2 more payments, my wife and I will retire our home mortgage this year. So, my banker friends here, don't come to me asking me about a mortgage or anything. I'm done with the mortgage thing for a while. I'm grateful for that. But here's where I'm going with this. There's a song that's one of my favorites. The chorus says this: "Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning new mercies I see. All I have ever needed thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me." That's sort of a theme for me, not just this time of year, but all year long, that God, our Father, who created us and who sustains us and who keeps us in the palms of His hands all throughout the year, when we pray to Him and ask Him for big things like paying off mortgages and staying in business for a quarter of a century or whatever else. To me, it's the little things that He does for us every day. I plant a big vegetable garden every year, and this year I planted about 5,000 square feet of garden, and I had 6 rows of sweet corn. And my sweet corn, when I got it germinated up, it looked absolutely pitiful. And I thought, I'm going to disc this up, and I'm going to do away with this and not have any sweet corn this year. But I prayed about my sweet corn. I know this is countrified, but I prayed about my sweet corn, and I worked hard. I did my part, and I asked the Lord, who helped me stay in business for 25 years and pay off this mortgage, to bless my garden. And I harvested more sweet corn than I needed. My wife and I put sweet corn up in our freezer, gone to bed, so to speak, as my granddaddy would say, and every other need that I've had this year has been met. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. God bless you.
Well, Glenn, I didn't get any of the sweet corn. I got some squash and some eggplant, but
Next year.
yeah, so you're holding out on me there. All right, so we're going to go ahead with our speaker, and to introduce Mr. Blackstone, we're going to have Holt Chetwood come up here.
Good afternoon. Well, I could hear Glenn Gordon preach all day. He is special. Glenn, you always do a great job with health and happiness. I'd asked him jokingly if he was going to sing today. I didn't know there was a part where he could have. Glenn, I wish he would have. So, outstanding job. I am very, very excited about our speaker today, Mr. Carl Blackstone from the Greater Columbia Chamber of Commerce. Before I introduce him, I do want to tell a quick story. I was home last Monday night, and I got a call from Carl on my cell phone, and he was a little bent out of shape, a little wound up. That's not the norm for Carl. In any circumstance, he is always extremely cool and calm. And I said, "Man, what's up?" He said, "Do you know who spoke at Rotary today?" I said, "No." "Bobby Richardson." I said, "Yeah, the Yankee." He said, "The Yankee." He missed the Yankee. Second baseman, beloved Yankee, World Series MVP. And I got to follow that guy. He said, "Hold on, I think there's been a setup." So when Carl comes up, I'll just ask that y'all give him a warm Columbia Rotary welcome. Carl, I know you're going to do a great job. Before Carl speaks, let me just say, Carl joined the Chamber in March of 2014. He is the CEO and President of the Columbia Chamber. He came in some very uncertain times, and the leadership he has provided to the Columbia Chamber has been nothing short of extraordinary. Both leadership within the Chamber, getting a number of things in line that needed to be in line, financially, public policy, a ton of work that has been done over the last 3.5 or so years, but also the work he has done outside the Columbia Chamber, in the Columbia community, in the business community, with the various councils here. Before he came to the Chamber, he was with a Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd subsidiary called Coppertone Strategies. He lobbied at both the state and the federal level. And before that, he was the chief legislative liaison for Governor Mark Sanford at both the State House and for the State House and the State Senate. Carl is from Little Washington, North Carolina. Many of y'all know JT McLawhorn with the Urban League. JT is from Little Washington, North Carolina. Carl went to the College of Charleston, was the student body president there. He married Mary Addison Heckard. Y'all may know the Heckards from Rock Hill. And they have 4 daughters, Mary Thomas, Frances, Margaret, and Kate. And Carl's a family man, but every night when he goes home, he certainly has the opportunity to sharpen up his negotiation and problem-solving skills. So, so glad to have Carl Blackstone, CEO and President of the Columbia Chamber. Carl, welcome.
Thank y'all. He is right. I called last Monday, but also, in fairness to Holt, I texted Creech too. So what have you done to me to have for me to follow Bobby Richardson? But thank you all so much for being here today and having me here. More importantly, this is Old Home Week. What Holt didn't say was when I moved here back in 2001, I was at the State Chamber of Commerce, and I was a member of this Rotary in 2002, 2003. Before I went into the governor's office, but just for the record, that's pre-Argentina, for those keeping tabs. But I was in the governor's office and was at Hainsworth for a long time. But even preceding that, which I really enjoyed seeing y'all ladies here today, I was a Rotarian exchange student back, I think it was in 1988. I was a summer exchange student to France and Germany. So it is a great experience. So thank you for being here today, ladies. What I thought I'd do was hit a little bit about the Chamber, talk a little bit about Columbia, and then I'll leave a few minutes for Q&A if that's okay. Today is a great time to be in Columbia, South Carolina. It is amazing the growth that we're seeing. You're going to hear all the accolades going around town. It really is a fun time to be here. It's a good time to be doing business here. But I think a lot of things that are going well are masking some of our things, opportunities, if you will, room for improvement. And so I'm going to hit a few of those as well. And the Columbia Chambers, we've been around since 1902. And it's the oldest chamber in South Carolina. It's a great venue, but we've had to up our game as well in this changing time. And so we have gone through a process this year. The Chamber's got a good year too, Glenn. We've gone through we hired a futurist this year. Now, for those of you that don't know what a futurist is, don't worry, I didn't either. I thought it was a glorified palm reader. It is not. It is somebody that's actually looking for the future. And so I'll get to that in a minute, but it's an exciting time for us as well. So let's talk about Columbia right now. Columbia, by the way, the name of our future program, our strategic plan for the next 20 years is called Forward Together, which is this presentation. But let's just talk about Columbia right now and the great things that have been happening. So we've seen about $2 billion worth of capital investment downtown Columbia in the last 4 years. It's amazing, right? There's a good article in the paper today about the growth downtown, bowling alleys and restaurants that are popping up all over the place. Mr. Durst is busy as can be with all the new hotels and restaurants going into Columbia. It's an exciting time, it really is. We've got the University of South Carolina growing by 1,000 kids a year for the last 16 years, over 36,000 students. It's amazing, right, to see the number of folks. Was it last year we had 4,000 new beds open up in downtown Columbia, or 4,000 new residents downtown, which is incredible. And those with the growth comes growing pains, and we've seen parking problems and traffic problems and all those other things, which is better than the alternative, no doubt about it. We like to compare ourselves to a lot of different places, and the skylines look very similar, but Columbia is unique. And I don't always enjoy the comparisons between Columbia and other parts of the country. Columbia needs to be compared to 49 other cities, and that's capital cities. We're not Greenville, we're not Charleston. We don't want to be. But we've got opportunities to find benchmarks elsewhere. And so as we look around the country and see the growth that is happening in other parts, it's important to kind of gauge where we are as well. Columbia is, and not just Columbia, any capital city is a challenge. We have such a diverse population. We have got a large bit of government in Columbia. Columbia's always been known as a government town, but between state, local, federal, university, and Fort Jackson, that's a big swath of land that's not on the tax roll. So we have 63% of the property in Columbia not taxable. For those that weren't math majors or went to college Charleston like me, that's 37% of people that are paying all the taxes. That's hard to attract new businesses in Columbia when the tax base is skewed, if you will. If you break it out through property taxes in Columbia, the values didn't make it, but let me tell you what they are. The larger blue section right there is about 60% of the tax bill in the city of Columbia goes to pay for schools, which is a great investment in our future, Dr. Elizabeth. You've got 21% goes to the county and about 19% goes to the city. When we compare ourselves to other places, you know, we've got in Columbia, South Carolina, and by the way, about a year and a half ago, 2 years, I got these graphs from my friend Bernie Maybank, and this comes from the Lincoln Institute out of Lincoln, Nebraska. But we have some of the lowest property taxes anywhere in the country when it comes to owner-occupied homes, thanks to Act 388 that passed in 2006. Commercial property is not so much. We're the 8th highest in the country. And this was 53 largest MSAs, by the way, they took a calculation. So out of the 53 largest MSAs in the country, according to the Lincoln Institute, we had the 8th highest commercial property taxes. The really striking number is this. Industrial property taxes are the highest anywhere in the country, right here in Columbia. So not only by a small margin, by 22% higher than number 2, which is Detroit. So the reason I bring this up is it just makes me wonder, as we've had 40 straight consecutive quarters of growth in the national economy, South Carolina has led the Southeast in 4 out of the last 5 years in economic development. We've had 3 industrial announcements in 6 years. So why is that? And what are the issues that we need to address? So as I've got teenage kids and teenage daughters, it's important to be self-aware, right? It's important to be confident in what you have, but also to understand strengths and weaknesses. This is our weakness right here. So what that really says, that graph, is it takes about 23 homes to pay the property taxes of what one commercial property in Columbia is going to pay. That's a lot of cash, I'm just telling you. But job growth is an even starker figure. If you look from 2012 to 2016, South Carolina has been booming. 26.2% job growth in Columbia, with in Charleston, South Carolina, with about 11% population growth. Greenville has seen about 9% growth in population with about 8.3% job growth. And then Columbia, we've seen a 5% job growth, but 5% population growth, but our job numbers are negative 2.6%. which, that's unbelievable, right? Which is counter to what the numbers I just said. We've seen about $2 billion worth of downtown. What's the deal? Most of the jobs we're seeing, most of the growth are in retail and hospitality. We're not attracting the white-collar jobs. We're not attracting advanced manufacturing that we need for tomorrow's future. So we as a community have got to come up with a decision, come up with a game plan on figuring out what's the best way forward for our community. It's not going to be the same as Charleston. It's not going to be the same as Greenville. And again, we don't need to rank ourselves against others, but look at the other southern capital cities. Tallahassee, for instance, when the first slide, we had 63% of property in Columbia not taxable. Tallahassee, another capital city with a large university, only has 30% of their property taxes, or property is not taxable. That's a significant difference from our 63%. So this to me is a huge number and a huge driving force, because if we want to talk about talent retention and we want to talk about attracting the millennials back to Columbia, we need to find the jobs. If you just want to look, Mr. Persons, I don't know if you can see that back in the back room. I can't either from here, so don't feel bad. But these are the top 20 occupational openings here in the Midlands. I can have this available for y'all if y'all want to see this a little bit earlier, a little bit later. This comes from the Department of Employee Workforce. So, but none of the jobs really are advanced manufacturing. There's a lot of day labor stuff, as well as hospitality jobs that are opening in Columbia. So where does that leave us? So all this data is really not worth a whole lot unless you can digest it and come up with a plan. So this time last year, the Chamber, along with its board, and we've got a good number of board members here besides Holt. Scott Campbell is on our board, John Durst and Matt Kennel. And we've got a few past chairs as well. See Jack in the back. Robin was here, and then Mr. Tom Persons was chair as well. We brought about 100 business people to the table back at the early part of this year in February and March, and we brought in this futurist. And the idea with the futurist was we needed to really look at the Chamber in a different way. The Chamber for a long time has been involved with community service, which is fine, but we've not spent as much time focusing on being the representative of the private sector in private growth and jobs in Columbia. And so we wanted, chambers of the world are really, as Carrie knows, chambers are 1960s, 1970s model trapped in the 21st century. And so we needed to figure out a new path forward for chambers. This is not just in Columbia, or not just in South Carolina, but nationally, chambers have got to reinvent themselves. So bringing in a futurist allowed the chamber to say, hey, what does a chamber need to do? What does this chamber need to do? Because if you ask 10 people in this room, what is a chamber of commerce, you're going to get 10 different answers. And that's a hard thing to sell if you've got 10 different views. So we brought in this futurist, and she was from Madison, Wisconsin, a girl named Rebecca Ryan. And she was an economist by trade, but she went to school in Houston to the futuring degree out of Houston, formed out of the oil and gas business and a way of the oil and gas industry to look out for years ahead. And the Army's been doing this for years. It's basically a way of having an end in mind. Where do you want to go? And let's figure out how to get there. So our whole notion was, let's look at Columbia in 20 years and ask the question, where does Columbia going to be in 20 years? Where does the business community need to be in 20 years? And more importantly, where does the chamber fit within that model? Because if it didn't fit, then we got a problem. We need to rewrite the whole script. So we had 100 people, and we ended up sitting down and coming up with scenarios of things that could happen. Because if you're looking that far in advance, it's hard to predict the future. And in fact, I guarantee you the one thing that's going to be truthful for the whole 20 years is the plan that we came out with is not going to be the plan that we get in 20 years, because things change on a daily basis. So it's a living document. We're going to have to go back and revisit this in the next 3 years. But what we did with the 100 people, we came up with some scenarios of what Columbia needs to be. And then we had a smaller group digest that and came out with some plans. And literally I was thinking, okay, maybe we can come up with a 5-year strategic plan. And they all said, Carl, let's just focus on the next 3 years. So the whole bit of work boiled down to 3 years of work, and then we'll revisit in 3 years. So the priorities for the future. We boiled them down to 4 different areas. And I'll go quickly hit these, and then I'll leave you a few minutes for Q&A. But one of the things that's famous about Columbia, and I call it the Congaree two-step, is if you don't like what I'm doing here, you go down the street and start your own thing. And we have a duplicative nature here in Columbia. And so what we need to do as a chamber is really bring all those groups together and figure out a common plan. It doesn't have to be the chamber's plan, but we need to come up with a strategy to move our community forward. We have 5 or 6 folks doing economic development within the region. We've got not a whole lot of talk to each other on a daily basis. So we need to transform the way that economic development is done here in Columbia, the way we do marketing. Because as we see with the job numbers going down, the loss of national companies, the nonprofit world is hard to find funding. And so we're going to have to think differently and do a lot more collaboration if we want to grow. So finding that shared vision and finding the ability to work together is going to be a big piece of what we're going to be doing. The other piece we need to look at is our elected bodies in Columbia and in Richland County as a whole. Y'all read the newspapers as much as I do, and we know that there's not a whole lot of confidence in some of our boards and commissions around town. And so we need, as a business community, I think for years we've put our head in the sand, but it's time that we need to take hold and play a bigger role in who represents us. Rightly or wrongly, as I mentioned, I've been a public employee on and off my entire life, but right now I'm currently on Richland County Council. We have 7 of the 11 on council are either current or retired public employees. In and of itself, not a problem. I mean, all have good intentions, but there's lack of awareness from the private sector. And we need a private sector approach to fixing some of the issues that we have. And so it's just about trying to find that balance. And so we're committed as a chamber to step up our role in finding people to get engaged in the public sphere. We need to create we actually created a program called the Political Leadership Institute, which would be a more or less Leadership Columbia graduate program. But it's for those folks that have an interest in serving this community. It's about putting understand what goes into public service and teaching individuals that have that interest about what it means to be a public servant before they get elected. What is a millage rate? How do you calculate millage rates? How does that impact the cost of a business? So unabashedly, this program is coming from the eyes of the business community, but trying to get pro-business and people that are in the process of running a business engaged in the political process. But it's important as we move forward. And that's not just on the local, it's statewide leadership, but it also gives us a pipeline for those that want to engage in everyday boards and commissions around town. We're going to continue to work with our Leadership Columbia Alumni Association to vet those folks and get them engaged as well. But it really takes, it's a culture shift, right? It's putting these people that serve in these roles, lift them up and understand that it's a partnership and that we need to accept our role as a private sector in helping develop young leaders, but also future public servants. The other thing that went on in this group meeting of 100 business leaders around town was understanding that the chamber is at a center point in this community that we need to embrace, and that is a convener and a connector role. That is hard to quantify, and that's hard to put on a spreadsheet of how do you can you sell a partnership or a membership on that notion of connecting and being? But it's a pivotal role that we as a chamber can do to bring the public sector and the private sector together to move forward. And that's a role that, quite frankly, when I first got to the chamber, I didn't see as a big deal. But the more I'm here, the more I realize that it's a unique opportunity for us, and one that, though you can't quantify it, it serves in the long run. So it's a big deal. So we're going to continue to help foster these groups together, bring them together, but our whole mission at the chamber is to create an environment where business can flourish. It is to be the mouthpiece of business and private sector. Though being a community advocate is important, we need jobs, we need to lower the cost of doing business here on this side of the river, but we've got to shorten that bridge across the Congaree and bring business together on both sides of the river. Because of time, and the one thing I did learn about Rotary 20 some odd years ago is you're out by 1:30. So I'm gonna cut it. There's a video. If you go to ColumbiaChamber.com, you'll be happy to see a video we put together on our futuring and our new core mission of the chamber and our strategic plan. But let me point out two other things. One, I was being critical of Columbia, but it's because I love Columbia that I'm critical. We have an opportunity to really improve this region, and we have so many good things happening, but we also need to press ourselves and to really focus on the 20-year vision. And that's harder to do, and it's harder to concentrate when everybody thinks that we're all looking through rose-colored glasses. But these are not insurmountable issues. It's just issues that we need to address if we want the private sector to grow. And I challenge anybody in this room to tell me a community that doesn't grow without the leadership and the drive from the private sector. So we're going to continue to do that. I don't want to leave, because y'all have been very, without mentioning what our involvement with Fort Jackson. For years we have a jewel here at Fort Jackson, the largest basic combat training camp in the country. Fort Jackson is growing, is doing extremely well. We graduate right now about 54% of all troops that go through the U.S. Army. That's larger than all three other bases combined. So if you go out Interstate 77 on a Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to see some gridlock around the post, and that's a good sign. But we graduate about 1,000 troops a week, and with that, they bring about 5 people each. So that's 5,000 visitors every week to Fort Jackson. So with great leadership from our congressional leaders, as well as our Post General Pete Johnson, they've done a remarkable job. We are looking possibly for a BRAC in 2021. It's before Congress now, whether that happens. Flip a coin if anything happens in Congress this year. But anyway, we have an opportunity to pick up some more missions at Fort Jackson. We've got land, and that really is a pride for all of us here in Columbia, that we have such a responsibility to train those soldiers here. So we're going to continue. That's been a cornerstone of the chamber for years. We're going to continue with that mission to make sure that we don't lose Fort Jackson, and we invest a lot of money. We have some consultants up in D.C. to make sure that we're on the front end of anything happening up there. But the Department of Defense provides about a $4.4 billion impact to the Columbia region. That's not just Fort Jackson, that's McIntyre, and that's the National Guard and the VA. But $4.4 billion is a truckload of money, and the impact is huge. So I'm going to cut it off here. I'm happy to take questions, but really thank y'all for letting me bore y'all today. I really am excited. I appreciate all of y'all who are partners with the Chamber and what you do for us. I'm excited about our path forward, but more importantly, I'm really excited about Columbia, but it's time to get to work. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Hey, Al.
Carl, thanks for your leadership. The numbers that you quoted, is that Richland and Lexington County? How does that encompass?
Some of them were the MSA. The first numbers about the industrial tax was MSA. The other numbers were just Columbia, Richland County. if you, on the slide deck, it has the source of the data and all that. Yes, sir.
What comments or observations do you have about the school system?
I think, and I've had this conversation with Dr. Witherspoon. We have some of the best schools, and we have some schools that just need some help, and we're not going to be able to have a world-class city unless we bring those schools that need improvement up. And the whole rising tide lifts all boats. We need that. We as a business community need to help embrace those schools that need work. But if you're in the Florida Dreher tract, you've got the best public schools that you can ever find. But we can't say that about everyone, and he's working hard to do that, but we also need the private sector to help those schools as well. Bernie?
Just 3 quick observations for you. The taxes in Richland County are significantly higher than than Charleston and Greenville. City of Columbia taxes are almost identical to the city of Greenville and the city of Charleston. The county taxes are almost identical. It's a school district where the higher differential is. Second of all, the university has a hotel. The university has restaurants open to the public. I suspect some of them are not paying taxes, and that's a horrible, unfair competitive advantage. You know, the university's hotel is 2 blocks from the private sector. Third, the state paper has repeatedly pointed out, as is the Quorum, which is a website, the misuse of accommodation tax money, which is supposed to be used exclusively to promote tourism. The chamber has been almost totally silent on that. Are y'all going to get more vocal on that particular issue?
In fact, that issue, we've got a survey out right now on our partnerships as far as what we're going to get involved with in the next coming political year. But that is a topic we're sending through our public policy committee right now. Thank you. Al?
Yeah, Paul, I want to commend you for continuing the strong connection with the military and with Fort Jackson. You really have. And I think that's a great thing. But I've also noticed that we attract a lot of enlisted and NCOs that retire from different bases around the state because they like Columbia, because it's diversity, it's near a large base and all that. Is that a potential workforce for industry?
It's a huge workforce. In fact, it's a significant number of folks that retire out of Fort Jackson, Shaw, McIntyre, because there are some active duty actually out at McIntyre that choose to call Columbia home. In fact, we have 5 previous commanding generals from Fort Jackson that have retired here in Columbia, which speaks volumes. We pride ourselves in being the most military-friendly community, and when you hear a commanding general and he hears that coming in, he goes, yeah, right, whatever, everybody says that. But when you have that many actually stay and retire here, it's a testament to what they think about this community. We've got Brad Becker, who is a 3-star up in D.C. He's in Iraq now. He wants to come back. Our previous General Cloutier is in AFRICOM, and he left his most prized possession here, his daughter. She's at University of South Carolina, and Pete Johnson's found a great home. So as long as we're doing what we're going to do, we're going to continue to see those retirees. So, all right, Bill.
Go ahead.
Real quick.
Yeah, the 6% assessment, Cole Banker had a house up at Lake Murray at $3.9 million, and the man was going to from the north, was going to make an offer on that house and move here, and he asked us to figure up his property taxes, and they were only going to be $108,000, and so he bought a house on a lake in North Carolina where the taxes are less than $20,000. Is the chamber doing anything? I mean, is there anything we can do? That 6% assessment is a killer.
388 is going to take a lot to fix. That is we can talk between now and next year on how to fix it, and it's got to have some legislative oomph to it. Right now, there's no will at the General Assembly level to fix it. But I agree, it's got to be done. It's holding back a lot of development. So, I got to cut it off.
Carl, we appreciate your leadership. In my little chamber, we all try to work together, but the Columbia Chamber really does give us a great role model here in the area, so we appreciate you. We're not going to have song this afternoon, but Stephen, you want to go ahead and tell us who's going to be here next week? Or the 27th?
That's right, not meeting next week. Hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. We're back here on the 27th. We've got Rotary District Governor Gary Brown is coming, so please come.
All right, that's it for today. Hope everybody has a great week.